The source of information was when I was working in the oil field well testing. And they had those well test units that operated off of well gas. It was all pneumatic, and it was fascinating how it worked. And it really intrigued me because they had floats that would sense the water pressure and open dumps, and the pressure from the well would push the water or the gas or the oil whichever way they wanted it to go. So, that was cool. Until we started testing the CO2 wells, because CO2 has the same physical properties as water, and under pressure, and our separators are under pressure. So if the pressures are not right and we don't get that CO2 phased correctly, it will dump liquid CO2 to the storage tanks. We never did, but a crew that worked before us got it wrong and dumped a load of liquid CO2 into a 15-foot by 20-foot diameter tank standing, and it went off like a pop can with a firecracker in it and shot that thing 200 feet into the air. So there's a lot of explosive decompression when you take liquid CO2 and you flash it off. Expansion ratio 65 to 1, something like that. And so, okay, that's cool. And then I got to thinking about that kind of what's possible. You know, they make CO2 pellet guns, you know, they get the little cartridges, bang, bang. Well, rather than having an internal combustion, why can't we have just an expansion? So I began thinking, okay, CO2. All right. If we developed an engine that had long, multiple cylinders built into the frame of the car, then you could inject small amounts of CO2 into 16 or 20 cylinders, and each one would give it a little push as it goes. Then you could enable a drivetrain. And the result is zero emissions and also cooling, right? Because with pressure drop, there is a consecutive or temperature drop. Just like if you see frost accumulating on the side of a propane tank when you're burning it. So the result, no emissions and a cooling effect. Great in the summer, right? Because you got air conditioning. So, okay, where do you come up with CO2? Well, obviously, one of the biggest concerns nowadays is the amount of CO2 that is being pumped into the atmosphere. Well, how do you sequester that? Well, okay, the sun shines in places every day. People tend to make solar arrays. How about a parabolic dish that focuses on a boiler and boils water? Now you got steam pressure. You can take a 25 pounds of pressure with a large diaphragm and a small piston, and you can pump up 10,000 pounds. This is another oil field throwback because we had to pressure test our tanks, and we did it up to 10,000 psi. We did it with a bottle of propane released at 25 pounds to a pump specifically designed to inject up to pressure. And over the weekend, you could get 10,000 psi. Well, at 600 psi and 71 degrees, carbon dioxide phase changes to a liquid. So if you had an array of steam generators with parabolic reflectors, you could take sunlight, boil water, and over a period of time, you could condense the air, and that is a hold on kinetic energy. You could milk off the CO2 into long, if you had a long tank with a bunch of little bottles underneath it, like tits on a hog, you could get these bottles of CO2, liquid. So you could use these liquid CO2s to power your car. So in essence, theoretically, you could have a car that ran on air. And the extra added bonus to that is you would be sequestering CO2 from the atmosphere. And then everybody be happy.